Hello everyone, my name's Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at BT16, and BT16 offers us lots of new and powerful tools in order to build and iterate on some new and existing decks. And today's deck I'm going to be taking a look at is going to be one that I kind of enjoy as a guilty pleasure, and that's going to be the latest update to the Leomon deck. So Leomon has a lot of things actually going for him and is a very annoying deck depending on the matchup, just because the deck has lots of mechanics going on with it to make it a fairly strong deck. The main effects coming from the black side are going to be in the form of Digivolve, which is a really good alternative form of removal, similarly to DP- coming from the yellow side of things. Then you also have the Fortitude mechanic to make your board as sticky and annoying as possible, as well as some good efficiency in terms of its evolution, thanks to also being in green. Then the deck is actually fairly consistent because of how much draw and search power that is built in, especially playing with all three of those colors. The biggest weakness of the deck, unfortunately, is the fact that it's still kind of a stack-based deck at the end of the day, which comes with some minor inconsistencies when it comes to finding the right part at the right time. Then blue decks and decks with alternative form of removal just absolutely eat this deck alive, because Fortitude only triggers when your Digimon is going to get deleted, and we have lots of on-delete effects to pair up with that ability. So any alternative form of removal, like bounce effects, will ruin your day, and blue more specifically has some other mechanics that really just make the deck weaker overall, like unblockable source stripping and the ability to just try to stun lock your Digimon. Then the boss monster isn't exactly the strongest. Like, he's good, but he's not that good compared to the contemporaries as far as some of the other defensive decks, allowing it so he could just end up getting walled out, and you're not really going to have good ways to try to aggress onto the opponent, especially if they have protection from all of our different abilities. But that's not saying the deck isn't strong or isn't fun, it's just a little bit more matchup reliant. So with all that said and done, let's just dive right into the deck profile, starting off with the Digitamas. So you could run a 5th Digitama if you really wanted to. Nyaromon is probably the best Digitama if you're going to run a 5th one, just because the Nyaromon can give us some extra DP during all turns, while our Digimon is suspended, which isn't too bad, so we could try to hit higher numbers. But the main Digitama that I'm going to be focusing on is going to be 4 copies of Freemon, because my rookies actually do care about Freemon in order to make their evolutions more efficient. And Freemon isn't bad Digitama just because it's a really decent card draw engine, interacting with our Leomon cards at the end of the day. Then, when it comes to the aforementioned level 3s, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Leomon, which also wants to digivolve efficiently on top of Freemon, similarly to the 4 copies of Elecmon. So these two cards are doing something relatively similar, where they both have on-delete inheritable abilities to respectively DP reduce by 2000 for Leomon and de-digivolve 1 for Elecmon, playing around with the mechanics that's going to be coinciding with their alternative color that isn't green. Then they also have different ways of searching through your cards to try to make the deck that much more consistent. Leomon is going to be searching through your security for Leomon named cards, where Elecmon is just your classical deck digger, so it's going to be digging through your deck for your Leomon cards. And then the last rookie could kind of just be whatever you want it to be. Most decks kind of just end up running an extra Elecmon in green just because of the name for some of your evolutions with your champions, but instead I'm choosing to run 3 copies of Ukamon because there really isn't a reason not to run Ukamon. Ukamon is just another consistency tool for the deck at the end of the day, so when a Digimon, including this, moves out from the raising or breeding area, then we get to hatch a new egg, so we could refresh that and digivolve into another rookie right away, and we also get the opportunity to look at the top 3 cards of our deck deck for any Digimon or Tamer among them and add it into our hand, allowing us to have alternative ways to try to find what we're looking for, and then we could be as aggressive with Ukomon as we want after that. Then when it comes to the level 4s, I'm running a fairly simple all Leomon lineup. So I'm going to be running one copy of the BT14 Leomon. So this is basically our warper in case we need to try to get up into our higher stages as fast as possible. This Leomon does the job really nicely because it's when attacking ability native to him states that if we're attacking a Digimon with higher DP than this Digimon, then we could Digivolve this Digimon into a level 6 with Leomon in its hand for the cost of 6 and ignoring the Digivolution requirements. And during our turn, with its inheritable ability, if we are in a Leomon named card, then we're also going to be getting a nice DP boost, which definitely helps us try to hit over specific numbers. Then I'm going to be running 2 copies of Mad Leomon from BT16. So this is the newest inclusion, and just like the EX5 cards, it really does care about Leomon and Elecmon more specifically to try to make our evolutions that much more efficient, which is why if you don't want to run Ukomon, I would highly recommend you run a Leomon or an Elecmon. But regardless, this card is still pretty decent at what he's doing, because his when attacking ability allows this Digimon to Digivolve into a Leomon named card from our hand or our trash, which gives us access to another zone to getting to the right card at the right time. Then he has a nice inheritable ability that triggers at the end of the attack. We get to delete this Digimon and we get to play a level 4 or lower Digimon from our trash for free, which might not seem like it's that great of effect, but with all of our fortitude abilities, it just lets us trigger our on deletes and our on plays that much more consistently. And then I'm going to be running 3 copies of Leomon. So Leomon is also treated as a Leomon, so it still kind of works with all of our Leomon synergy, and this, along with the 4 copies of EX5 Leomon, are basically doing the exact same thing, where when we're attacking with the card, we get a Digivolve into a Leomon named card from our hand, and reduce the Digivolution cost by 1, so that way we could try to swing into the opponent's Digimon, Digivolve mid-attack, and try to gain as much benefit off of our level 5s as we possibly can. Then, just like the Leomon and Elecmon, the inheritable abilities are going to reflect their alternative color that isn't green. So Leomon is going to minus 2000 DP when our Digimon gets deleted, and Leomon is going to de-Digivolve 1 onto one of the opponent's Digimon. Then when it comes to the level 5, there's really no reason not to run this level 5 lineup of just 4 Loader Leomons and 4 Grap Leomons, all from EX5. So both of them are trying to Digivolve more efficiently on our Leomons, which all of our level 4s are Leomons, so we don't have to worry too much about that. And they both have Fortitude, so when the Digimon would be deleted, we basically get to replay him as long as he had a Digivolution source, which he should if he's Digivolving, and we have other cards to try to add into our inheritable sources to make sure that we could re-trigger Fortitude. Then Grap Leomon, more specifically, has a nice on-play and when Digivolving ability to return one of the opponent's Digimon with 4000 DP or less to the bottom of their deck, which plays really nicely with both DP reduction and de-Digivolve to try to get the opponent's Digimon in that weakened state so that this removal effect can actually hit them. Then he's also having a nice inheritable ability to give our higher stage Leomons the piercing ability, so when they're trying to beat up the opponent's Digimon or just swinging, it doesn't matter if they block or we attack into the opponent's Digimon, we're always going to try to get that damage across. And then the Loader Leomon is having a very similar playstyle, just taking things a little bit more on the defensive side, because his on-play and when Digivolving ability is going to reduce one of the opponent's Digimon by 3000 DP until the end of their turn, which is really good because persistent debuffs are just really strong when it comes to Digimon with certain abilities and protections. Then on top of that, you also have the inheritable ability that's giving our higher stage Leomon the blocker ability, so we have actual defensive lines of play in the deck as well. Which then leads us into our level 6s, which is the end result of what we're trying to do. So I'm going to be running 2 copies of Bancho Leomon from EX5. This card is just okay, but he's still a pretty decent card to think about nonetheless, because he has an on-play and when digivolving ability to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon, which allows us to take full advantage of a lot of our abilities. Then on top of that, he also has an all turns ability that activates once per turn. When a Digimon becomes suspended, we can have one of the opponent's Digimon get minus 4,000 DP and security attack -1 until the end of their turn, really limiting the potential of their Digimon, which depending on the matchup actually could matter in this meta environment. And then the main level 6 of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Heavy Leomon. So unlike Bancho Leomon, Heavy Leomon actually has the Fortitude ability, which is really strong because he's a level 6 that's going to be playing himself out for free when he gets deleted, along with triggering all of our various on-delete effects we could stack in him. And thanks to Mad Leomon, we could even trigger this ourselves if we really wanted to. Then we also have a nice when digivolving and on delete ability to de-digivolve one on one of the opponent's Digimon, and then bottom deck one of their Digimon with 6,000 DP or lower, which is again pretty decent. It's just doing what Leomon is doing, just a little bit stronger. And the fact that it's an on delete ability, it means that it triggers with Fortitude, which means it comes back and then they have to basically deal with this ability again, because it'll trigger when this Digimon gets deleted if it does again. Then he even has an end of attack ability that's really pushing the overall aggression and control of this deck, where we get to return one of the opponent's Digimon with 4,000 DP or less to the bottom of their deck. And if we didn't remove a Digimon, then we get to unsuspend this Digimon, so it's either killing a body or it's going to be unsuspending, so we could play more aggressively or defensively based on how our stack situation is. Then I'm going to be running 1 copy of Death Exmon because it's Death Exmon. It's just a really good answer to wide boards, which this deck really doesn't have the greatest answer for. It's also playing a lot with some of the mechanics like de-digivolve and making itself cheaper, so it's just a very easy level 7 for the deck to play. But if you wanted to cut Death Exmon and play something else in its place, like Omnimon Merciful Mode or Quartzmon, or even the brand new Chaosmon, then you're more than welcome to try to play some of those cards, and you don't even have to run a level 7 if you didn't want to at all in the deck, just because Heavy Leomon is going to be the main boss monster we want to try to end on. Then when it comes to the options, I'm just going to be keeping it light and simple with 2 copies of Agility Training for that extra consistency boost and speed of evolution, and 2 copies of the BT9 X Antibody as just a vanilla card that we're going to throw underneath our Digimon, so that way they have an inheritable source to re-trigger Fortitude again. Then when it comes to some of the other options, this is just more removal and tech cards. So I'm going to run 2 copies of Final Zubagon Punch because, again, if Heavy Leomon is our main boss monster, he's already at 13k. So this will just by default, no matter what stack we're in, is going to be making him 16k. So he could gain blocker, reboot, and security attack plus to try to deal as much damage as possible while being as annoying as possible, having a defensive backbone to it as well. Then I'm going to be running 2 copies of Heaven's Judgment. You really could take out Flashy Boss Punch and run another Heaven's Judgment if you really wanted to, but I still like having the tech 1 of Flashy Boss Punch for a specific reason. But Heaven's Judgment is just the better removal option because we could use this card as long as we have a green Digimon or Tamer, which everything is green, and we're even already playing into part yellow. Then we get to use its main ability to activate the following effect for each color Digimon we have. So by default, it's already going to give one of the opponent's Digimon minus 6k, and then for every color on top of that, that's that's present on our field, we're going to be adding another -6k, which allows us to deal with a lot of different situations and potentially strong Digimon and wide boards. Then the security ability is a little bit less impressive with just a flat -12k, which is why I kind of like Flashy Boss Punch, more so because its security effect is a little bit better, because it's still doing the -12k, but it's also suspending one of the opponent's Digimon down. Then it also has a nice main ability that we don't really care about the color requirements for, where we get to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon down, and one of the opponent's Digimon gets -12,000 DP for the turn. Then if we have a Digimon with Leomon or Banchomon in its name, then we also can attack, so it's just a pretty versatile removal option as well. Then when it comes to the Tamers, I'm just settling for the good old classic 2 copies of Mimi from BT1 because she's still just one of the best green Tamers in the entire game. She's not only going to be our dedicated memory fixer, but she also is going to allow us to gain access at another raising phase as long as we have a level 5 or higher green Digimon in play, which isn't very hard for the deck to do, and this does combo with Ukomon to be able to try to trigger Ukomon that much more often and consistently. Then on top of that, I'm just going to be running 3 copies of Analog Youth because Analog Youth is just another cheap tamer for us to use to try to cycle through our deck and find the cards that we need. We don't necessarily care about cards going into our trash because we have a card like Mad Leomon. And on top of that, the secondary ability is actually pretty decent because when our level 5 or higher Digimon do get deleted, which would trigger our Fortitude, then we get to suspend this tamer, gain a memory, and hatch a new Digi-Egg into an empty space in our raising area, again allowing us to have different ways to play with our raising area while playing in combination to the strengths of Fortitude as a mechanic. And that's kind of it for the build. I think that the build is a fairly strong one. It's pretty straightforward, but still does a lot to be able to handle a lot of different situations. It might not be the best deck in the meta, but it's still a pretty fun one that does have lots of flexibility based on how you want to approach building the deck. And we do have a lot of other useful tools that we could think about utilizing depending on what you have access to, the abilities you want to prioritize, and just what your expected meta that you're going to be facing is going to end up being. And then we do even have some potential future support to further upgrade and enhance the deck when we eventually get these cards, so it's not like the deck is going to be a bad investment overall.